Okay, hello and welcome to today's event. My name is Ana and I'm the Program Outreach Manager for Latinas in Tech. First of all, I would like to thank PayPal for our partnership. Oh, it's not moving. And if this is for your first time joining our event, you're welcome and I just want to tell you you're in a great company. Today, I'm delighted to present you to a promising panel of successful Latinas working in PayPal. But first, I would like to tell you a little more about our organization. At Latinas in Tech, our mission is to ensure that Latinas are well represented in the tech companies, but we're also thriving, innovating, and moving up the corporate ladder. We do this by building progress and event focused on professional development, recruitment, and mentorship. Latinas in Tech was founded in 2014 in Silicon Valley. What started with a group of 4 friends is now a group of over 10,000 women. Our members represent almost every major tech company and represent the heritage of every single Spanish or Portuguese-speaking country. Our community is well connected through our Facebook group, but we also have a members-only portal for Latinas to connect with each other and access job opportunities and past webinars just like this. If you're a Latina in tech, this is a place for you. You will be joined over 2,000 women already there. You can create your profile by visiting our website at latinasintech.com. So with that being said, I would like to pass the mic to our moderator for today's event, Daniela Jorge, who will be introducing our panel. Daniela is the Vice President of Global Design and User Research at PayPal, leading the team responsible for creating experience for PayPal.com, as well Venmo, Zoom, and PayPal products to the deep customer understanding and exceptional design. Hi, Daniela. Thank you for being here, and I will let you, take it away and introduce the panel.
Great, thank you, Anna, and thank you, Latinas in Tech, for hosting us. My name is Daniela, and I'm originally from Brazil, so I'm Latina and an immigrant. And that's one of the things that I really love about PayPal is just our commitment to diversity and inclusion, and the fact that we get to directly get involved in these efforts as well. To give you an example, I'm one of the sponsors for Women Who Build, which is the Women in Tech organization at PayPal, for Aliados, which is the Latinx employee resource group, and for a newly formed team called Justice Driven Product Design that's looking to ensure that we are building unbiased products and solutions. I'm going to be joined today by 4 of my colleagues who are also Latinas leading teams here at PayPal and who are equally passionate about diversity and inclusion. They'll be joining me in just a moment and will be introducing themselves. But before we do that, I wanted to just orient you to a few features in Zoom, if you will. There's a Q&A icon on the bottom of your screen or somewhere on your screen if you're not using a laptop. Please use that to ask us any questions, and you can ask questions anytime. We'll leave time at the end of the session to address all of your questions, but if you have questions that are related to what we're talking about, I may introduce those as we're going as well. So we want this to be conversational and interactive. You can also feel free to add comments in chat and interact with each other in chat, but know that we'll be looking at the questions in the Q&A icon. So it's the ones with the 2 talk bubbles. Use that one for questions, please. And so without further ado, I would love to introduce our panelists and have them tell us a bit about themselves and how they ended up in their current role at PayPal. And we are starting with you, Susan.
Hi, Daniela. Thank you. And really excited to be here. So Susan Calderon, I am the VP of M&A integration at here PayPal. And I got to this wonderful role through spending many years doing integration for M&A across many companies that you probably have heard of. Some of the names like, Yahoo and Cisco and Salesforce and DocuSign. And really love this space in that it offers us, such a great opportunity to really understand a business end to end. Because when you're buying companies and you're figuring out how to bring them together, you really get sort of that full cross-functional view of what the operations and business strategy is. So that's a little bit about myself, and excited to just be here and share a little more. Thanks, Daniela.
Thank you. And April?
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Yeah. I'm April Valenzuela Mason, and I am a director of marketing where I lead marketing for PayPal Working Capital, which is a small business loan here at PayPal. I am coming to you live from the sunny Scottsdale, Arizona, but I'm usually in San Jose, California. I joined PayPal 5 years ago after running my own management consulting firm for about 10 years. And I have a husband of 23 years, same guy, and 2 kids in college. They're at ASU, and that's why I'm here in Arizona dropping them off for school. I'm so glad to be here.
Thank you, April. Next, we have Sarah.
Hi, hi, Daniela. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for having us here today. I know this is a very important forum at the right time, right? So my name is Sarah Newman. I actually joined PayPal in January, so I'm relatively new to the firm. I am a director at the Global Regulatory Relations team. And I came through JP Morgan, where I spent 14 years in the risk organization covering various parts of the company. Prior to that, I was at Goldman Sachs, where I started really my career in the risk world. And happy to be here at PayPal. I came to actually, I knew there was a point in time in my career where I wanted to go into something else, another company, because I was at a point where I was either going to stay at my current company, which at the time was great, or I was going to make some moves and see what else is really out there. And so I came across PayPal through LinkedIn. A recruiter had reached out to me. And the interesting part about this is that I would say for the past year, I had some recruiters reach out and there were some companies that I was throwing around and I really wasn't quite interested. But the minute that PayPal came to my attention, it really piqued my interest. And it was just that very natural reaction that I reacted to. And long and behold, a few months of conversations and interviews, I met an absolute fabulous team. I was eager to join. And so here I am. And once again, thank you for having me.
Great, thank you. And last but certainly not least, Flavia.
Hi, Daniela, thank you. Thanks for the introduction. Really happy to be here. I was also born and raised in Brazil, and I moved to the US in 2000. And my plan initially was to get a master's and work for a year in the US and then move back to Brazil, where I had a job waiting for me. And then plans changed slightly, and I'm still here. I am really passionate about payments and just providing access to everyone, everywhere. I worked for Visa for 13 years before joining PayPal. And while I was feeling just really comfortable at work, I just felt like I needed to make a jump and see what was out there. I had been also working a lot with just very focused on Latin America. And at the time, I felt like as a Latina, I had to prove myself or work extra hard to just work with the US market or other regions. So one day a friend of mine, and that's super important to network. So a friend of mine that used to work for Visa called me and said her company was negotiating a partnership with Visa and they were looking for a lawyer. So I said, oh, that sounds like a great opportunity. And fast forward about a month later, I joined PayPal, and that was about 3.5 years ago, and I couldn't be happier. I am also part of our Aliados Latinx affinity group, and I'm a mentor with a program called Crecemos, and I'm really thrilled to be here. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And thank you for all the panelists for joining. Feel free to turn your cameras on so that this feels a little bit more like an actual physical panel, even though we're all virtual. That way everyone can see each of you. So the first part that I wanted to ask, because I think it is so relevant about what it means to be Latinas and you know, the sort of our cultural background, our family background. For me personally, growing up in Brazil, and growing up in an age where we were just coming out of a military dictatorship, my parents' attitude was very much one of, I think, hope and optimism, and having this feeling that they could do anything, right? It was like this new world opening up for everyone. And I think that really gave me that same sort of feeling and has carried through with me. And when I moved to the United States as an immigrant, I really was inspired by how my parents acted and behaved, I think, as professionals. So I'm fascinated always to learn about how those lessons have shaped who we are as leaders. And Susan, I wanted to start with you about what was a lesson that you learned when you were growing up that you still implement to date?
Yeah, thanks, Daniela. I think what you just said really resonates for me. I also, I'm first generation American, grew up born and raised in San Francisco, and I come from a pretty strong lineage of strong women, you know, starting with my, you know, great grandmother, all the way through, you know, really my mom, who made the leap in coming to the United States in her early 20s. And I think the lessons I've learned is that of perseverance and really that sort of never give up attitude. And I just remember, you know, it'd be every morning, Sunday morning at the, you know, breakfast table with your café con leche and your pan dulce, talking about why you needed to just, you know, do your best, and school was the most important thing. And you know, look at how, you know, where we've gotten so far. And again, you know, we have very humble beginnings. And that really just stuck with me. Like the fact that you just have to persevere and just have grit and move forward, make mistakes, get up, figure it out, move forward. And so I think that I took through all of my career, really. And in some decisions that I made, you know, they didn't work out, but took the lessons, took it to the next level and the next level and the next level. And I think those small steps looking back to me really encapsulate, really from a values perspective, what sort of my mom and grandparents and family kind of really shared with me at those Sunday morning coffee chats that we used to have. So yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear that consistency. I think about that sort of courage and perseverance, and it's definitely, I think, a common theme that I hear when speaking to others as well. April, I think you had something to share on this too.
Well, for me, I grew up with, I think, 30 cousins or so in a big Mexican family, and for the most part, it was a very male-dominated kind of family and situation. And I think the girls were encouraged to study hard and to achieve, but for the most part, we weren't expected really to talk a lot. Honestly, I had one aunt who was very who talked a lot, but aside from my Nina Kika, nobody else. Women really didn't talk. It was really the men who spoke. So I learned to speak up kind of painfully. It was a painful experience I wanted to share with you, because I think it's it might help other people if it helped me. So I remember my first real job. I was in a managerial development program, and I was surrounded by people who were 2 and 3 times my age, who knew everything about everything. They knew everything about the organization and the people and how to do the job. And so I would go into our team meetings, and I would listen very carefully, and I would take all kinds of notes, and because I didn't know anything. And after a few meetings like this, my boss Hilda, who was a Latina, she comes up, she says, hey, we need to talk. And I said, okay, what's happening? She said, we go to the meetings and you just sit there. What's happening? I said, well, I don't know anything about anything. I mean, I'm learning. And she said, I don't want you to learn this job. You're not here to learn this job. I've hired you to speak up. I hired you for your perspective. If I wanted somebody to learn this job, I would have promoted somebody who could do this job forever. I don't expect you to do this job forever. I expect you to contribute your unique perspective. I expect you to change things for the better. And so from then on, I realized I had to be more like my Nina Kika and less like how I was supposed to be raised, and to be able to speak my mind and to be able to be deliberate about what I was saying, especially in a work setting. That was the expectation. That's what I learned.
I love that lesson, and it's one that I always think about, especially, you know, for anyone who's a parent, for anyone who's starting out, or for anyone who's mentoring. I think that is such an important piece of advice, which, and it actually relates exactly to our next question, which was, you know, knowing what you know now, what advice would you give to your younger self? And I think, April, you already touched on that a bit. It sounds like that was a lesson that you learned, that if you could go back in time, you probably would have given yourself that advice. So would love to hear from others. Sarah, maybe starting with you. What do you wish you could tell yourself when you were starting out?
You know, when I started off, the image is still very vivid, right? I walk into, I was taken from the second floor of our HR department and walked into a trading floor, our equities trading floor at the time. And the doors just opened, and all I saw was just hundreds and hundreds of people and screaming and yelling. And I was, you know, shown to my manager, who then showed me my desk, and, you know, this is my 30 square foot space that I have, and, you know, this was mine, right? And yes, and so that was a very intimidating, perhaps, entry, right, for me. So what I would tell my younger self is, yeah, to own it, right, to feel confident. Because I remember at the time I wasn't confident, and I think that's, you know, naturally so in hindsight, right, because this is the first time really entering corporate America in this way. So I would say confidence, right? And when you don't have it, seek those that are going to really show you the way. And I think it took me a while in the early part of my career to really seek out mentors, because I just wanted to get the job done, right? And so kind of like that cultural upbringing comes into play, and you're like, get the job done, because you've always, you know, you got to work, right? And so, and I think that, yes, to my younger self is have a level of confidence, seek mentorship, and own it. So that would be my advice to myself. I think you're on mute.
Who else has anything else that they would add in terms of this advice? Again, if you had that opportunity.
Daniela, I would love to share my perspective, and I completely agree with Sarah on the mentorship. I never had a mentor in my life, and now that I am one, and at first I just said, okay, what does it mean to be a mentor? I'm going to show up and I have no idea what to say, and then just by talking to these wonderful people, I realized that, you know, it would have been amazing to get that type of support, and to just, you know, just life lessons or things that I could have done better, should have done, but because I was so young, I didn't know. So I'm having the, you know, great opportunity just to share with them, with my mentees, what I guess I would have done differently, or, you know, just things I have learned. So number one, I agree with Sarah, is get a mentor and surround yourself with people that really support your dreams and your passions. And also, I know it sounds cliche, but really focus on work-life balance. I always thought, and I am really passionate about my job and very intense about the things I love. But I think for many, many years, at least 15 years, I put work first and before everything else. So I was literally working as I went into labor and had my first baby. And I worked every single day of my maternity leave. And when I just thought the project I was working on couldn't wait. And I feel like I should have focused on, you know, just spending time with my family and with my firstborn, when I was so driven and so focused on growing and being promoted, or that I just loved my job so much that it was really all that mattered. So I think we're very privileged to be part of a company where our CEO says family comes first, and you can just feel that that's exactly how he feels about his family, and also thinking about us as family members and people who. So my advice is work hard, but also find time to have a hobby and spend lots of time with your family and friends, because it is true, we only live once.
I think that's such important advice, and this topic of work-life integration, and I agree with you. It is one of the things that frankly, it's not the primary thing, but it's one of the things that differentiates PayPal from other companies. At times when I'll hear about very interesting opportunities in other companies, that is always the number one thing that comes to the forefront, is that I actually feel like that is something that sets us apart. I also have an advice on this work life and perspective piece that I always share with my mentor groups, which is something I borrowed from, I believe it's Susie Orman, and it's the 10-10-10 rule. I don't know if you're all familiar with it. She uses it for decision making. I use it for perspective setting, which is, will this matter in 10 days, 10 months, or 10 years? And usually when you're stressing about that one email or that one presentation or that one meeting, and you ask yourself that question, it really helps you put it in perspective, especially in relation to sort of personal stuff or family time. So it's a framework that I always use myself too. Not easy to do, but it's a good reminder. Any other advice before we shift gears? Great. So one of the questions that I think folks usually have for individuals who are in leadership roles like yourselves is, how did you get here? What was that journey, and how did your early career choices influence your trajectory? So maybe we'll start with you, Flavia, and then if others have something to add.
So as I mentioned, I grew up in Brazil, and we go straight from, for those who are not familiar, we go straight from high school to whatever college we decide to pursue. So when I was 16, I had to decide to apply to law schools because I wanted to be a lawyer. And not everyone knows exactly what they want to do for the rest of their lives when they're 16. And I think I was very fortunate that my grandpa was a lawyer, and he moved from Russia to Brazil when he was about 6 years old. So he really inspired me. And I think I just, was really passionate about becoming a lawyer. And of course, I thought I was just going to change the world for the better. So I started law school when I was 16. And then I really loved everything that had to do with banks. And I joined a bank when I was in my 4th year out of 5 years of law school, and I just wanted to work with banking law. And from then on, I applied for a master's program. There was a joint business and law degree, and I worked with with legal, but loved the business aspect of it. So I knew that I wanted to transition from being in a law firm to a company, and just be able to, solve legal problems and help and negotiate contracts, but also having that contact with the day-to-day business decisions and strategy and finance. And so I think finding out pretty early was, I felt really lucky about what I really wanted to do for the rest of my life. But and I've worked for just great companies and had great team members. And I think PayPal is just a tremendous place that allows for us to just move around, to work with in global transactions, deals, and just get to know, a bit about every different region. And I do love that, the global aspect of it. So I think just by that was a bit of my journey of how I got to a place that I absolutely enjoy coming to work every day.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. On that point of what you enjoy about coming to work every day, Susan, what is it that you love most about your job?
Yeah, because where I sit in the business, really we're part of a corporate development team, and corporate development at any company really looks at how to grow the business, how to think about the future strategy of the company. And for us at PayPal, it's really, really taking on this larger mission of bringing, financial services and opening up all of the opportunities, not only for the U.S. market, but just globally, really democratizing the financial services space. And so with that mission, we get to look at some really cool opportunities on, what does that look like for PayPal and what is the future of our business, and figuring out which companies to acquire, what does that look like from an overall operating perspective. The part that I love the most is that we get to see like the cross-functional nature of our company. And we understand, or from the early days of sort of, how you do bring in an employee group that might be sitting in Sweden, or a group that is sitting in Brazil, or a group that's sitting in Mexico, and make them part of the larger PayPal infrastructure and family. And so, and that's what my job is, right? To figure out how to then bring in these acquisitions and integrate them wholly, both from a operational perspective, but more importantly from a culture perspective, so that we bring along sort of the overall mission and values as a company to the acquired staff. And that is probably the best part about sort of what I do. It's just seeing those opportunities flourish, and then down the line see how our business is growing and what impact we're making, what services we're opening, what markets we're serving, which, all of that, the nature of the work itself is what's fascinating to me. So I feel super lucky to be in this type of role.
That's great. Yeah, no, I think that people aspect, right, whether it is employees or customers, is probably what drives all of us, and I think probably most of you who are listening to this panel as well. In my role as head of design and research, we get to interact with our customers directly quite a bit on a daily basis. And I have to say, I actually have video clips in my head that play of specific customer interviews that we do. That is what gets me out of bed every day. There's one that was, I think, 3 years ago, and it still plays in my head, on a consistent basis, which is we were doing some research in Mexico, and this is why I find this is relevant for this team. And we sent a cross-functional team of folks here from San Jose to Mexico to learn about how people were receiving money through Zoom, which is our international remittance tool. We had always looked, our customers are really the ones who are sending money, so we hadn't looked too much at the receiver experience, but we felt like we needed to understand the full customer journey. A team went to Mexico, to some remote areas, and they were trying to understand what that was like. And there was this video of this young mom, and she's holding her baby, and she's talking about having to get on the bus, and it's, the town is 2 hours away, and she would go to town to pick up her money that her uncle from the United States had sent her. And they would be like, oh, we're sorry, we're out of cash today. You have to come back tomorrow, because of the posts where the money is being picked up might be like a small store or a small bank in a village. And the team was like, but then what do you do? She's like, I get on the bus tomorrow again. I go back into town and see if they have money. So you can imagine this product development team came back to the United States completely changed and motivated to go help and solve that problem. And it's the fact that we get to have a direct impact in people's lives, not just people's financial lives, but their actual lives, that I think gets all of us out of bed, and I would say probably underpins, all of our jobs. So I'm seeing that we're getting tons of questions. So I think I'm going to shift gears and start getting some of the questions that are coming in, and then we can go back to some of our pre-planned questions, if that's okay with our panelists. So the first question, and I'm going to go by which ones are being upvoted, is how do you get a mentor? And what is the difference between getting a mentor and getting a sponsor? Who would like to answer this one?
I'll jump in.
Please.
So I think there's a lot of conflicting advice out there about mentorship, and I've heard things like you don't choose a mentor chooses you, and I think there are nuances between sponsors and mentors, and I'm not even sure what it is. But I will say this: I have had really good luck with, and this might be controversial, with singling out people that I really admire, right? And usually these people are maybe 1 or 2 levels above, and I will write a nice email saying, I really admire you, basically. Not that, you know what, I'll actually put it in the chat if I can find the email that I sent, because it basically says, I would like to, meet for coffee once a month if you're up for it, and discuss the business. And, I forget what I said, but basically it was an outreach email that said, I trust you and want to see if there's any suggestions you would have for my growth. And we worked together. And it wasn't like, I just kind of admired him on a stage and then wrote him. Like, we worked together. So we knew each other, but it wasn't a formal setup. It wasn't a formal thing until I started to have the once a month coffee chats. And then that turned into, at some point he had to recommend me for promotion, right? Like promotions at PayPal and basically in any other big company is not just your boss saying, oh, she's ready for promotion. Everybody has to weigh in. And if one person says, oh, I don't think she's ready, that's a big thing. And you need other people to say, oh yeah, not only is the person ready, but the job is also ready. And so now we have a marriage of person and job. But this person was able to advocate because we had established this relationship, not just in our, meetings and work relationship, but outside the work, the general meetings and work relationship we had. So I would say my advice would be to, find somebody you like, that you already have a bit of a rapport with maybe 1 or 2 levels up, and just reach out and say, let's meet once a month, talk about your kids, and then slip in some work in there, and I'm having a problem, and see what they say.
That's great advice. And it sounds like you got lucky where your mentor ended up being your sponsor. So just for those who haven't heard those 2 terms before, in terms of, clarifying, especially the sponsor term is potentially one that's less familiar to everyone. So a sponsor is someone who might be in a position where they can actually influence outcomes like a promotion. So, your mentor doesn't necessarily need to be someone who's going to be in the room when those decisions are going to be made or in a position of influence, but a sponsor is generally someone who's going to be in that room or in a position where they can influence your growth and development. So at least that has been the definition that I've always heard, and the way that I look at whether or not someone is a mentor and a sponsor, or just a mentor because I'm learning from them. For me personally, one example is I look at a lot of my peers as mentors as well, because they see me in action more directly just as much as my manager, and they can help me also grow. So, I also view that as a mentoring relationship, even though we're peers. I may have a couple of people that I work with closely that are also informally viewed as mentors by myself, that I never went to them and say, hey, do you want to be my mentor? It's more like, hey, I'm working on this thing. I'm trying to do better, in terms of speaking up in meetings or presenting my point of view. Can you tell me if I did that well enough in that last one and what I should do differently? So anyone else with anything else to add on this particular topic?
Yeah, Daniela, I think also it's sort of incumbent upon us, even everyone on the call, to kind of reach out and try to be a mentor, even when when it could be just very informal, but like you initiating and seeing if you're looking at a talent in your organization, reaching across functions. I know that sort of in a previous organization, I was working with the Latinx group there, and there was a gal who was just very strong around the program management skills. And I don't know if she knew that she was showing up that way. So I just kind of took it upon myself to set up some coffee and kind of share that, hey, I really thought that, you know, you did this well, and wow, have you ever thought about this opportunity in program management? And sort of kind of started the conversation there. And then it turned into just a mentorship opportunity where we did have sort of touch points across the year. And it started very much from a project we were working on together. And she didn't ask for it, but I was like, you know, trying to kind of pass it forward, or kind of, you know, do a little bit more proactive thinking of who I could go support. So I would encourage us to do that as well.
That's great. The other thing too is if you are in a company like PayPal where there are employee resource groups, those groups will often have mentoring sessions. So I know for almost all of our employee resource groups, if not all, they also provide mentor programs. I participate in 2 separate ones where I mentor groups and individuals as part of those. So that might be another way as well if someone is looking for mentor. We have a lot of awesome questions coming on, so I'm going to move on to the next upvoted one. Excellent question. Latinas are the lowest pay minority group across several industries, not just tech, with 53 cents to the dollar. What is PayPal doing to identify and correct the pay gap? So we are doing a couple of things on this front. The first one is that we actually worked towards and have maintained 100% pay equity for women globally, and for ethnic pay parity in the US for the 4th year in a row. This is included in one of the annual reports that we publish, so you can get more detail and information there. We're also going beyond pay parity, or at least something that I haven't seen and heard as much from other companies, which is financial health. So one of the announcements that Dan Schulman, our CEO, made, and this is also open and public, you can look it up and read more about it, is really looking at disposable income for all levels of our employees, and realizing that for a segment of our population, they only ended up with, you know, single digits disposable income at the end of the month when they were done paying all of their bills and all of their financial obligations. So we have a target of addressing that, and have been systematically addressing it both from a pay perspective. We introduced equity for all levels, which is something that wasn't necessarily available before. And then last but not least, on the pay front and the financial health front, we have programs where we look a couple of times, I think it's 2 or 3 times a year, we look at pay equity, and we make adjustments where we actually see opportunities. So there's quite a bit of oversight and proactiveness. Anything else that I missed for those who are on the panel and familiar with everything that we're doing? Great. Thank you for that question. That's a really important question. And yes, I will try and find the articles and share the links while we're answering one of the other questions. Someone just asked that question. So I will try looking for that source and share it here. The next question from Vanessa. Thank you, Vanessa, for the question. How do you use your leader position to empower the Latina community?
So I'm going to jump into this one. You know, I do think that as you grow in your own career, and you've seen I can speak for myself, as I've seen also, you know, the roads that I've traveled and where I've did not take the right step, could have done this better or not. I do feel personally that I really have to share that with my mentees, and I do mentor, and so I have about 14 people that I do mentor, and I do guide them through that path, right? And just through my own experience. So I do think it's important from as you advance in your own career, that you always look as to who are you bringing with you, right? And I say that also to my mentees. There will be a day that I will be working for you. And so, you know, just make sure that you bring people along. And that really just has to be something that sometimes, you know, in your busy schedule, you forget. And so that is mentoring, just kind of back on that topic for a moment, is a good way to get back. really taken a part in your organization, right? So as ideas, when we talk about diversity and inclusion in your own respective company, you know, a female leader should step in, right? And even when times are tough, right? So when you don't have time, still step in. I think that's a responsibility that we have to own. Yeah, so that would be my advice on that topic.
And Danielle, I think I just to add on that, I completely agree that on the mentorship, and I have also been involved in other organizations that promote growth of Hispanic and Latinos, and just expanding your network, and just even on LinkedIn, where people reach out, and whatever I can do to give back and just help out. I have met so many people along the way, or people that I actually have never met, that just reach out asking for help, for a recommendation or guidance. Or I got a call from somebody I had met when I was negotiating a deal with Argentina, and had moved to New Zealand, and was asking, well, do you think I should move to the US and take the bar? How do you see the market for a Latina there? So, I think those things are just amazing. And those conversations, I really encourage anyone who wants to just chat, or to just reach out. I'm totally open to that too.
Thank you both. Susan, this one is for you. M&A is typically a male-dominated team. How have you managed being heard throughout your career, and what do you as a VP do to ensure more gender equity?
Yeah,
Thank you, Ashley.
That's a great question, because I do often find myself in a room of lots of male counterparts. And I think, it's a couple of things. I think in my career in M&A, I did start as a consultant, sort of working for the big four traditional firms. And then I got lucky in that I, live in the Bay Area, so tech was around me. And so a lot of what, I did was really hone in on those skills that, I saw that were really critical to where M&A integration work lies. And that's really around the ability to really understand a complex solved issue and problem, and break it down into very simple sort of tactical things that you're going to work on as a team. This work is very much relationship based, so really honing the skills around influence, relationship building, making the connections across groups and teams and executives. It's about synthesizing key issues and knowing how to articulate them in a way that is, again, very clear, sort of prescriptive in some ways, and very solution oriented. So I think when I kind of finally decided, hey, M&A integration is kind of where I want to be, I took the lens of, so what are the skills that I need to really work on, and what gives me sort of a little bit of the edge that I can, shine a little bit more. And luckily, with the work that, integration sometimes takes you to global places, right? So I got lucky to do work in Argentina because I speak Spanish. Work in Europe. And I think there's something about sort of the even the broader skill set, and I think women bring this as well, which is a high level of EQ, and really then also the culture perspective. And so being Latina sort of brings me kind of full circle around sort of what are those cultural sort of elements that I bring to the relationships that I'm having with the internet, the companies that we're bringing in. How do I sort of use that like additional skill set to stand out? And again, it's through language. It's just really through understanding how sort of some of these unique experiences gives me a little bit of an edge. And so I was able to kind of assess the field, say what are the skills that I'm going to need, and then what's unique about what I bring as a Latina, as a Spanish speaking sort of born native in San Francisco. What's unique about that, and how do I bring that perspective to my field? So in all of that, I think again, sort of really honing the skills and sort of bringing those forward in what traditionally had been sort of a bit of a male dominated world. And what I do today is I make sure that I have a very balanced team at all levels, right? I really do look for the best talent, but the best talent at, with a diversity that is representative of the companies that we're also bringing into to PayPal, which is we're a global company, so we should look very much global in nature and balanced. So if that answers the question.
It's a great answer, and I love your point about sort of celebrating, or the unique perspective that you bring. I feel like that is something that has always been helpful in setting ourselves apart, instead of focusing on it and feeling like it's something that's going to single you out in a negative. That
Right.
people start to realize, even before I think diversity was something that everyone, or many people, I wish it was everyone, that many people understood was an asset. I think being able to show how you might be approaching things from a different perspective or from a different angle. And for me, it's been, right, being Latina, being an immigrant, thinking like a designer, and talking to people who don't think like a designer, and really promoting that as an asset, and getting others to see it as an asset, I think, as opposed to, I think, feeling like, wow, I'm the only one of my kind here in all of those dimensions that I just shared, right? And really like actually promoting that as an asset for the team. So I love that point. Sarah, did you have something you wanted to contribute?
Yeah, yeah, sure. I mean, and this is also comes from the fact that I am Latina, right? And so I remember many comments throughout my career. A couple of my colleagues would say, you should definitely not be a poker player because you wear it all right here. And so yes, so I realized that was, hard to it. At one point I just came to the realization that part of me is just never going to leave me, right? I'm never going to be able to curtail that. But how do I turn that into an asset? And so with that same vein, there were managers of mine who then they knew that they could really read me through just looking at me, right? There were really no filters in that sense. And so there was a level of trust and there was bonding. And I was like, okay, when I say something to her, by just looking at her, I'm gonna get to really know what she's thinking. And so, yeah, and throughout my career, I always got the comment, "Oh, you're very passionate about, you can sense the passion in what you accomplish." And so, what I translated that to was, "Okay, I'm Latina. Yes, you're gonna sense the passion in what I'm trying to convey." And unfortunately, I can naturally tone that down, right? But I can definitely message it correctly, right? Where I'm honing in on what is it that I want to say, what is the outcome that we need, and turning it and forming it in that way, where it's less scattered and more structured. So, yeah.
Great. All right, we have another question here that's getting a lot of votes. So women need to be bold, I agree. Tell us about the highest technical project failure you experienced, and how did that failure propel your future successes? Does anyone have any examples of technical project failure? And if not, I can go first. If not, I'll be honest, I saw this question and I was racking my brain. And I think it's because I focus so little on failures. I always, think much more about like how we moved forward as opposed to something that failed. But I remembered my very first project, it was my first job, it was a Kodak. And we were doing something that was similar to this. It was called Photo Chat. And essentially we would invite really famous photographers, and we would have a bunch of people coming in and asking questions. They would do a presentation of their photos and then they would ask questions. This was in the 90s, just to set context. So technology wasn't what it is today. And we worked with an agency. We built this thing for this chat room. And the first event that we hosted, we had 200 people showed up, and sure enough, the thing crashed within like 2 minutes. And I was the one responsible for the project. So, first of all, what it taught me is I'm still here. I still did really well in my career. So I think those failures don't define you. And that goes again, back to that point about keeping perspective. But it helped me figure out how I may have approached situations like this different, that were high stakes. I think the main thing for me was just learning how to set expectations, and not necessarily to be you know, a worry wart and be highlighting everything that could go wrong, but it's just really about setting expectations and outlining risks with stakeholders and making sure that we also had contingency plans in place for these high stakes situations. So that's something that I probably do naturally now and without thinking, but that was for me the biggest lesson that has carried through.
I can talk a little bit about a failure. It wasn't a I guess you could call it a technical failure. So I think, you know, sort of, again, kind of going back to the roots of like, keep going, persevere, you've got to make it here. You know, you're basically carrying the family flag forward. I did actually go to law school when I was done. Yes, Fabia, I went to law school. And, but I just wasn't very good at it. And I think sort of year 1.5, I was like, oh, this is not for me. I learned a ton. I learned a ton about myself. I learned a ton about what I really wanted to do with my career, which at that point I really didn't think I knew. But you know, it was hard. It was hard to say like, wow, I've worked all this to get to this point, because you know, law school is not easy to get into and even, you know, survived year 1. And then I decided to leave. And that failure really took me into a world that I actually never thought I would go into, which was like a social service role. I worked for the DA's office in child welfare policy. And from that is where my technology career actually started, and I got into consulting, and then fast forward many, many years. So I think that I learned so much from that. It's about failure is good. Sometimes it leads you into places you never would have thought you'd be. And it teaches you about perseverance and picking everything back up and keep pushing. So that was a little bit of my personal technical failure, but it all turned out for the better. So yeah.
I love that. And it's also that reminder that nothing is permanent, at least in work. I think that's, again, another one of those perspective reminders. We can change our mind, we can change course. So I really like that lesson. So another very popular question, it might be the last one that we're able to take. We'll see how it goes. But I think that this is such an important topic that I would love to go around and ask everyone. So you had said that work-life balance is important, but have you found that is quite a challenge when working in tech? It seems like this industry is always on. So what do you do to maintain balance? Maybe we can go around and each of us speak about what strategies we use to maintain that balance.
I can go first. I think, well, PayPal, I don't know if everyone at PayPal receives these emails, but I get emails that say, would you like to set focus time? And then it populates, like it finds times where your calendar is free and books. So what I do is I try to book at least an hour a day where I will either focus on drafting agreements and I'm not all the time on the phone, or I'll sit outside in my backyard and eat there, or I'll just check on my kids, or I'll go for a walk. But I make sure now that I take at least an hour a day to myself. And even if my schedule is crazy and I have calls starting at 7 a.m. and ending at 7:30 p.m., I make sure that throughout the day I find time to do little things that are not work related.
Who else?
I can go really quickly. I, like you, I also block out some time during my day just so that I can, in the morning when I have to get my kids ready, like it's, 6:30 to 7:30, and that's their time. No calls before then. I make sure I have lunch. And then for my team, like recently with the current situation that we're in, we've implemented sort of a no meetings Friday. And we do this every other week just to give ourselves a little bit of a breather and time to think, and maybe do other things, right? And I also encourage just PTO time. I think a lot of us don't take advantage, and luckily at PayPal we do have the flexibility of taking time, that is warranted, and, having a conversation with their manager of like mental wellness, mental health is really critical during these days. So encouraging that as well with the team. So a couple of strategies there.
Sarah?
Oh, just again, I think it's just setting up some boundaries, right? During these times in COVID, I've actually set 6 o'clock to 7:30. It's time for me I enjoy making dinner. I enjoy sitting down with my family. That's the time that we have to catch up. And so I didn't realize that how good I had set up these boundaries, that now I have calls. They're like, oh, it's 6 o'clock. Okay, we got to end this call now because you have to start dinner. And I'm like, wow, I'm succeeding at this, So yes, setting up some boundaries and really sticking to it will help. It helps me in my work life.
April?
Yeah.
Thank you, Sarah.
So somebody mentioned mental health, and it started me thinking about an experience I had that kind of relates to the last question about failures, and a couple other questions in the chat that I saw, like, when do you know it's time to move on or whatever. I had in a previous job many years ago, I had a manager who was a brilliant person. I mean, super brilliant, but a terrible manager. And I didn't realize it at the time. I thought it was me. I thought it was all me. And I had come off a manager that I could do no wrong. Like, I was just on fire all the time. Like, I was just going so well. And then I got this manager who was just, I could not do anything right. And it started to take a personal toll. And perhaps there's a cultural aspect to this as well, but mental health was not a thing. Like, if you had depression, my mother suffers from a bipolar disorder, that was considered like made up or not real, or, it wasn't a thing. And so, so I started to get like a panic disorder, like a legit panic disorder, like couldn't breathe, felt like vomiting all the time, couldn't get in my car, sometimes couldn't leave the house. It was a big mess for a while. And thinking like I would be weak for seeking help. It was because only, weak people felt like this, was kind of the tape in my head. And it took kind of going to really, I think, a brink where I said, it's not weak to get help. And I found help and worked through it. And I actually got some perspective, but I ended up leaving that company and starting my own consulting firm that I stuck with 10 years and built it. It was very successful. It's how I came to PayPal. But it was a big wake up call that mental health is so important. And when you need help, to seek it early, because it won't get better by itself. Like, sometimes you really do need help through it, and there's no way under it or around it. You have to just kind of go through it. And for people who work at big companies like PayPal, the company realizes how important it is. Mental health is very important. And if you go to PayPal and you go to the bridge, put in, I think it's Employee Assistant Program, put in EAP into the bridge, EAP. And then you'll see there's a whole ton of benefits there, especially in this time of COVID, where anxiety is so high, especially with people with children, people taking care of their parents, and we're all bunched up together, and night runs into day, runs into the weekends. And there's no place to go on vacation. It's very anxiety provoking. So if you need help, seek help. It's the best thing you can do for yourself. That's what I would say.
Yeah, no, that wellness is so important. It's also one of our corporate values at PayPal, and one of the things that I value about PayPal as well is the fact that we take wellness very seriously, and we support it. We have wellness days now that we're during quarantine, where the whole company is taking those days off. We have a sabbatical after 5 years. So when I was thinking about my work-life balance integration, it's, I'm someone who prefers to take long periods of time, where I go to Brazil, where I go to Montenegro, where my partner is from, and I'll just go for 3 weeks. We used to do this 2 times a year. We have untracked vacation in the US at PayPal. So that's a really nice perk. But we would travel for 3 weeks at a time. So for me, those were my sort of work-life balance periods, was being able to travel, looking forward to the sabbatical, and just I think this flexibility. For instance, I worked from home Mondays and Fridays, even before shelter in place. So I think it's very unique and individual, and it's figuring out what works best for you. And then, like many of you said, setting those boundaries and making sure that that's a priority. I know we're at time, so I want to be respectful of everyone's time and thank my panelists. And Anna, are you closing this or am I?
Hi, yes, no, I just want to thank everybody. You know, it was a really, I don't know, super nice conversation. I love the fact that you are super, you know, truthful to yourself and also give it great advice to the audience. I've been seeing the chat, everybody super engaged and having a great comments. I really appreciate all of you to be here today and sharing with all the Latinas in the community your experience and your stories.
Thank you. Thank you all for having. Thank you to the panelists. You can find me on Twitter if there's other questions that we didn't answer. LinkedIn, I'm starting to restrict it more to people that I know, but you can DM me on Twitter with any questions and I can connect you to folks as well. And if others want to share how you can be reached out to as well.
Yeah, for me would be LinkedIn. So yes, please feel free to reach out to me through LinkedIn.
Me too.
Yep.
Same here, LinkedIn.
All right.
Great. Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Latinas in Tech.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
Thank you.